a small town outside hired ruffians, a large nefarious corporation, a lone lawman, a stare down at a train station that escalates into a shootout. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm the best Virginian. You might think the situation I just described is something in some Wild West town during the 1800s, but this series of events actually happened in the 1920s in the small town of Matewan, West Virginia. As you can see, it's a new year. Got a new coffee mug, new Batman mug. I'm excited for this. For this week's episode, we're going to have to go down to Mingo County, right on the border with Kentucky. Fun fact, it's one of 5 counties whose women terrify me. Want to try and guess the other 4? Leave it in the comments down below. I know there's some of you that probably expect that more counties have women that terrify me, but feel free to leave those too. So, the Battle of Matewan was probably one of the biggest catalysts that led to the Battle of Blair Mountain. But it's actually just one chapter of what would be the much larger West Virginia Coal Wars. The Coal Wars actually started during the Paint Creek and Cabin Creek strikes. This is when you start seeing prolific characters like the Baldwin Felts, Mother Jones, Keeney, individuals whose actions there would later come up in their roles with the Battle of Blair Mountain. The events were kicked off when coal operators turned down a wage increase for miners at the Paint Creek mines. Soon, other miners in nearby towns, including non-union miners, also went on strike. Soon, the demands went far beyond wages. Initially, the demands had to deal with how the miners were paid. Specifically, they wanted paid in standard U.S. currency. At the time, most miners were paid in money that could only be used at company stores. They also had problems with mine guards that basically acted as town police officers, always, of course, siding with the mine, along with how they weighed the coal and various other little things like that. Even issues going as far as most town theaters only showed movies that the mine operators approved of. It came down to really issues of the freedom to assemble and freedom of speech was what some of these miners were fighting for. And also, issues like company housing. A lot of these guys, when they joined the union, they were kicked out of their company housing. Not just did they lose their job, but then them and their families had to move into these basically tent colonies. This strike would go on for a year and a half, and during the strike, gunfights and explosions were very common between the miners and mine guards and hired ruffians from the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency. That's a name that's going to come up a couple more times. At the end of it all, the governor, Henry D. Hatfield himself, had to step in to negotiate terms for ending the strike. Governor Hatfield proposed an ultimatum that was actually favorable to the miners, but those who refused to sign it actually faced deportation from the state. It also allowed the United Mine Workers of America to set up a headquarters in Charleston, West Virginia. In January 1920, Frank Keeney, president of the United Mine Workers of America, District 17, would begin a drive to try and unionize the rest of the southern West Virginia coal fields. Much like with the Paint Creek and Cabin Creek strikes, violence quickly broke out between the miners, the hired ruffians, and the newly formed state police. Towns affected included Borderland, Mohawk, Freeburn, and War Eagle. There's a town in West Virginia called War Eagle. That just sounds like someone that, holds a grudge because Cobra Commander killed their father. War Eagle is a name. Like, remember back in school, the very first day the teacher would call out roll, and at the end, the teacher would be like, okay, is there anyone here that has like a nickname they'd want to go by? And Elizabeth would be like, I want to be called Les. And Patrick would be like, I want to be called Ricky. Nah, man, just call me War Eagle. This is my friend Mohawk over here. Don't make eye contact with him. I wouldn't do it. You made eye contact with him, didn't you? I can't help you anymore. War Eagle can't help you. In May 1920, workers of the Stone Mountain Coal Company began to unionize. Those who signed with the UMWA were quickly fired and asked to leave their company housing. When some refused, the Baldwin Felts detectives were called in to carry out the evictions. The Baldwin Felts were well-known union breakers. Like, if you think of the Pinkertons as far as private detectives go, the Baldwin Felts were the equivalent, but for union breakers. During the Cabin Creek strike, hundreds of detectives had harassed and evicted miners, going as far as to setting up machine guns and firing upon the miners. Years earlier, they had been at the Ludlow strike in Colorado, where they had mounted a machine gun on an armored car and ripped around one of the miner tent colonies, firing at the miners. They were well known to the miners. It was well known that they were always armed and that they were well paid by the mine operators. They had even once offered the mayor of Matewan $500 to place machine guns on the roofs in Matewan. Now that's about $6,000 if you adjust for inflation. May 19th, 1920, 13 detectives, two of which, Albert and Lee Felts, were brothers of one of the agency's founders. They entered Matewan and began evicting families at gunpoint, throwing their belongings out into the streets, and there was a pretty steady drizzle of rain that day. After serving several of these evictions, the detectives then had dinner at the town hotel and proceeded to the station to catch the 5 o'clock train back to Bluefield, Virginia. At this point, as the rumors were getting around of these evictions throughout the day and who were carrying out the evictions, miners had slowly started to gather, first into small groups, but that group slowly formed into an unorganized mob. And this mob was just hanging out on the streets of Matewan, some of them kind of hoping something would go down. As the detectives made their way to the train platform, they were approached by the mayor of Matewan and police chief Sid Hatfield. Sid Hatfield. Look at that smile. Look at that. Sid Hatfield was a coal miner before he became a lawman, and on top of that, he was related to the Hatfields from the famous Hatfield and McCoy feud. Sid Hatfield's grandfather and Devil Enos Hatfield's grandfathers were half-brothers. When Sid Hatfield approached the detectives, he declared that he had arrest warrants for them, upon which the Baldwin Felts declared that they had arrest warrants for Sid Hatfield. This led to a very tense standoff, like super tense. Like you could cut the tension with a knife. When the mayor of Matewan started investigating the Baldwin Felts warrants, he declared they were fake, and shortly thereafter, the first shots were fired. No one's sure who fired the first shots. There are testimonies that try to condemn both of the parties. All we know is that when the dust settled, 7 Baldwin Felt detectives, including both of the founders' brothers, and 3 citizens of Matewan, including the mayor, had been slain. These events made Sid Hatfield a living legend, especially amongst laborers. He was the man that had went against the Baldwin Felts and had won. Like, I'm not saying he achieved John Henry levels of legendary status, but like Homer Hickam levels of legendary status. And there is Sid Hatfield Homer Hickam connection. There is a 1987 film called Matewan, and this was the debut film for Chris Cooper. Later on, Chris Cooper would play John Hickam, Homer Hickham's father, in the 1999 movie October Sky. Also, Matewan stars Darth Vader. Yeah, it stars James Earl Jones. We're not done here. I'm going to have to do another episode where we talk about the trial for the Matewan massacre, the Sid Hatfield trial, and the events that would eventually lead up to and the Battle of Blair Mountain. Thank you for sticking around till the end. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to stay wild, stay wonderful, and I'll talk to you later.